The Laser Master 2 Pro is a diode-based laser engraver from Ortur with a work area of 400 by 400 millimeters. This is a higher-end model with built-in flame detection, an emergency stop switch, and a sensor to kill the laser if the machine is bumped while engraving. The Laser Master 2 Pro comes standard with end stops, which allow the laser to automatically home to the same place, which is great for repeatability. This will also allow you to fully take advantage of LightBurn's different origin modes, giving you the most control of how you run your jobs. In this video, we are going to be getting the Ortur Laser Master 2 Pro up and running with LightBurn. I'll take you through the setup and installation with Windows as well as Mac, and then we will go through a short beginner tutorial to get you on your way. Timestamps will be below so that you can skip around as needed. For the Windows install, the first thing we're going to need to do is install the STM micro driver. This is provided by Ortur, and I'll have a link in the description over to this page so you can make sure you are downloading the correct thing. There is a version for Windows 8 to Windows 10, as well as a version for Windows 7, and you'll need to know whether you are running a 32-bit or a 64-bit operating system. 64-bit is sort of the standard for most modern operating systems, but to confirm this, if you go down to the Start menu and type in the word System, and click System Information, it will open up a window, and in that window you'll easily be able to determine the operating system you're currently running if you don't know. Next to System Type, as you can see here, mine says I am running a 64-based PC, and so that confirms that we need the appropriate 64-bit version of that driver. Once confirmed, click on the driver. That will download the executable file that we will need to run to get this installed. Open up that file and go ahead and run through it like you would if you were installing anything on your computer. It will ask you for a username and a company name. Don't be alarmed, there's nothing special that needs to go here, and you can quite literally put the word user and the name company, and it will let you go ahead and get beyond this and install the driver. As you can see, it says STM Electronics ready to use. We don't need to have it go online and check for a new version, so on this part, just go ahead and click no skip this step, and the driver has been successfully installed. Now that we've got the correct driver installed, we can plug the power cable into our laser engraver, as well as the included USB cable. One end will go into the machine, and the other end will go into our computer. Then to power on the machine, just hold down the power button for 5 seconds, and it should auto home. If you do have a different Ortur machine, you might notice that your control panel looks slightly different, but it should operate in the same way. There are 2 LEDs on the control panel, a red and a blue. When the machine is powered on, you should see a solid red light, and when it is plugged into the computer, you should see a solid blue light. If for some reason you don't see that blue light, make sure the USB cable is plugged in correctly, and you can always try to unplug and plug it back in, but you should be seeing both a solid red and a solid blue light. With the machine powered on and plugged into our computer, we're now ready to install LightBurn. To do this, we'll head over to the Downloads page. For Windows, there is going to be a 64-bit as well as a 32-bit version of LightBurn. Whichever version we discovered a moment ago is the version we're running when we install the driver, will be the version of LightBurn that you'll want to download. So in our case, it is the 64-bit. Clicking on it will save the executable file. And once it's downloaded, go ahead and click on that to open up the installer. Once the installer opens up, it will prompt you through the installation process. You just need to click next throughout all of this. And when you get to the final page, you'll see there's a couple of options for a specific driver. That's going to be for larger DSP machines. We don't need to worry about any of that, so just select Finish, which will launch LightBurn. The first time you open up LightBurn, you're going to be greeted by the device window. It's going to be blank, which is normal. We'll need to add our Ortur machine into LightBurn. And to do this, we will click on the Find My Laser button, which will open up a prompt window. This window will remind you to make sure your device is connected via USB. It should be both connected via USB as well as powered on, which we did cover in a previous step. When you click Next, LightBurn is going to scan your computer to see if it detects any laser engravers attached to your machine. If for some reason you don't see your device listed here, double check that you installed the driver we covered earlier and that it installed correctly, and then also try power cycling your laser engraver as well as unplugging and plugging in the USB cable again. After a brief moment, we should see our device listed. As you can see here, it says under device info, it's found one machine that is running Grbl firmware with a work area of 400 by 400 millimeters. It is a G-code type device connected via serial USB. All we need to do on this page is select add device. The next page will have us name it something. I just went ahead and named it what the specific engraver is called. If you're going to be running multiple machines, you will definitely want to name it something specific so that way you know which device you are connected to. It's also a good idea to confirm that the X and Y axis length is correct. Right here, 400 by 400 millimeters is spot on to what it's supposed to be. So once we've confirmed that, we can click next. On this page, it's going to ask us where the origin of our laser is. For the Laser Master 2 Pro, it's going to be the front left, and that's going to be the same for most G-code devices, so you will not want to change that. The Laser Master 2 Pro also has end stop, so we'll want the auto home your laser on startup enabled. If you have a different Ortur machine that doesn't have end stops, make sure that you disable this before going on to the next page. This is just a summary showing all of the settings we just agreed to, and we can select finish on that. Once that closes, you will see now the Laser Master 2 Pro is listed in our device list. It says Grbl, and we can go ahead and click OK, which will allow us to then go into LightBurn. To confirm connectivity, you should see in the right laser window, it's saying ready, which just means that LightBurn is detecting the machine and that it is connected and ready to run. And in the console, you can also see that LightBurn has actually read a little bit of information about the machine off of the controller. If at some point you open LightBurn and notice that the laser says disconnected instead of ready, but it's powered on and plugged in, it's possible that your computer's assigned a different COM port to it. And so next to devices in that same laser window, there's a drop down. I've only got the option for COM3 because I've only got one thing plugged into this computer. But if you were to see, let's say COM3 and then COM5 and COM3 isn't working, it's a good idea to select the other COM option and see if at that point the laser status changes from disconnected to ready. For macOS, you won't need to install any drivers, so we'll start off with plugging the power cable into our machine, followed by the included USB cable. One end will go into the controller, and the other end will go into your computer. Then hold down the power button for 5 seconds. This will power on the machine and trigger the homing sequence. If you have a different Ortur model, you might have a slightly different looking panel, but it should operate the same way. There are two LEDs on the controller, one red for power and one blue that means that the controller is connected to your computer, so you'll want to make sure that you see both of those LEDs. If for some reason the blue is not lit up, go ahead and unplug the USB cable and try plugging it back in, because you do want to make sure you see both the red and blue LED before moving on. With your machine connected to your Mac and powered on, it is time to download and install LightBurn. To do this, we will head over to the downloads page and scroll down to where we see the Mac OS version. Clicking on that will download the disk image needed to install LightBurn for your Mac. Once downloaded, if you click on that, it will open up a Finder window with your applications folder in LightBurn. To install it, just drag LightBurn into the applications folder and it will copy that to your applications. After installing or updating LightBurn on Mac, if you try to run LightBurn from Launchpad, you'll get this pop-up saying that it can't be opened. This will only happen the first time that you install LightBurn or update it and try to run it. So what you'll need to do is click the Show in Finder option, which will open up your Finder window with all of your different applications. And then if you scroll down to where you see LightBurn and right-click on LightBurn and select Open, there will be another pop-up that will allow you to then choose to open LightBurn. And once you do this the first time, again, you can launch it normally from Launchpad. It's just the first time. The first time you run LightBurn, you'll be greeted by the device window, which will be empty. We'll need to add our laser into LightBurn. To do this, we'll head down to Find My Laser, which will open up the device discovery wizard. It'll remind you that your engraver should be hooked up via USB, and based off our previous step, it should also be powered on. Clicking next will have LightBurn then scan your computer to see if it detects any machines connected to your computer. If you get to this next window and it doesn't find your machine, go back and make sure you see both the red and blue light, meaning it's powered on and plugged in. And it's not a bad idea to also try power cycling the machine and unplugging and plugging it back in. As long as your machine is both powered on and connected via USB, LightBurn should have no problem detecting it when it does scan your computer. And as you can see here, it did find the LaserMaster 2 Pro, and it's got some info saying that it is running Grbl firmware with a work area of 400 by 400 millimeters, and it is a G-code type machine that is connected via serial USB. When you see your device, select Add Device, and then it will have you on the next page name your device. If you have multiple machines, this is even more important. You want to make sure that you can easily identify which machine you're selecting. I've only got one LaserMaster 2 Pro, so I'm just going to name it the actual name of this specific model. And then you'll also want to just confirm that the work area that it has grabbed is correct. 400 by 400 millimeters is spot on for this machine, so I can just choose Next. This page will have you choose the origin for your laser. By default, it should have the front left selected, which is correct for the LaserMaster 2 Pro, as well as most G-code machines. So if you don't know where your origin is, your best bet is to leave it at the front left, because changing it can do all sorts of funny things with your jobs later on. And then auto home your laser on startup should be enabled for the LaserMaster 2 Pro because it has end stops. If you have a different Ortur model that doesn't have end stops, you'll want to make sure you uncheck that before moving on. This next page is just a summary of the things that we selected as well as the things it detected. Everything looks great here, so we can select Finish. And now in the device list, you'll see your device listed, as well as it says it is a Grbl machine. And we can choose OK, which will close out of this and automatically grab that one device. In the laser window, you'll probably see that it says disconnected. On all Macs that I've installed LightBurn on, it does start off by saying disconnected. And the easy way to get your device connected is to just close out of LightBurn, open LightBurn up again, and then it should auto detect and connect to your machine. As you can see now, it says ready. And this is just the first time when you're installing. Every time after that, as long as your device is plugged in and powered on and it's in the same COM port, then it should have no issues auto connecting. And in console, we can see also that LightBurn was able to grab some information off of the controller. If at some point you open LightBurn and notice that it says disconnected in the laser window, but you've confirmed that the machine is powered on and plugged in, it's possible that your computer has assigned it a different COM port. In that same little window next to devices, there is a drop-down menu, and you can see all of the different COM port options, and so you can go through the different COM ports. For Mac, I did have to close out of LightBurn once I selected the new one and open it again. For example, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 USB modem is the correct COM port, but after I selected it, it's still not connecting. So when I closed out of LightBurn, opened it back up again, it now says ready and it has connected to the laser. Now that LightBurn's installed and our machine is connected, we're going to run through a small project engraving some text. This will sort of teach you some of the basic tools as well as help you with beginning to gain a bit of familiarity with the whole layout and workflow of using LightBurn. We are going to start off with our design. So we'll head over to the left toolbar and select the text tool. That's the icon that is the letter A. Clicking that will activate the text tool, and then if you go over to the workspace, you can click anywhere and it will turn into a cursor where you can then type in your name or whatever word you're going to want to be using for this project. To exit the text tool and to go back to the select tool, we can either go to the toolbar on the left and select the top mouse pointer, or if you hit the escape key on your keyboard twice, that'll also get you out of that mode and back into select mode. Heading to the top right window, that is the cuts and layers window, where we will see specific information about our design. If we were to run this job, you can see the speed it would currently be running at, the power, the mode, what layer, color layer that it is pertaining to. Right now, we've only got the black text layer, so this is those settings. And then on the bottom, you can make some changes, like if you want to speed it up or slow it down, change your power, or how many times you'd like to run a pass. Right now, we don't need to worry about that, and we can just leave those default values. If you head up to the top toolbar, there is an icon that looks like a computer screen or a monitor. That is the icon for preview. And if you click on that, it'll open up the preview window that'll show you the output of your job if you were to run it right now. The black lines represent where the laser would engrave, the thin red lines represent the travel movements, and if you click play in the bottom right, you can actually see a simulation of this job being ran. This is a really cool window, and it's a great way to make sure what you think is going to happen based off the settings you give in LightBurn is what is actually going to be happening. If we click on the text that we previously typed, we'll see in the top toolbar an area that pops up with a bunch of options to configure our text. You can do bold, italicized, all uppercase, different sizes, different spacings, and you have access to all of the fonts that are installed on your computer. So there's already going to be a ton of options, but if there is a specific style you're looking for and you download it off of the web and install it on your computer, you can then access it from within LightBurn. Scrolling through the different font options, you can see your text update in real time, which is a really great way to make sure that you like the way a certain font looks with the text and you're getting sort of the desired look that you're going for. If you want to undo or redo a step, there are a backwards and forwards arrow in the top toolbar that you can use. Additionally, there are hotkeys. Control Z will be to undo and Control Shift Z will redo the last action. Heading back over to the cuts and layers window, we're going to change the mode from line to fill. We'll do this by just clicking where it says line to open up the drop-down menu and then selecting fill. After doing that, if you head over to the preview window again, you can see the update of what that's going to do. And so with line, the laser was just going to quickly trace an outline of all of our letters. And with fill, the laser is going to be going in a back and forth pattern and filling in all of the text. In the playback window, you also have the ability to adjust speed because it is a pretty long engraving in comparison to the outline. So if you go, at 20x speed, you can quickly see what the entire job is going to be doing. Next, we're going to be adding an outline to our text using the offset tool. To do this, we'll click on our text to make sure it's active. You'll know it's active because of the moving squiggly lines. And then in the left toolbar, the O icon is for the offset shapes. Clicking on that will open up the offset window, and you can already see that it has applied a 5mm outward offset by default. And there are quite a lot of options within this dialog box that you can configure, whether you want the offset to be inward, outward, as well as playing around with some different styles. There's really not a right or wrong, and you can also choose the distance of the offset. This can be done by using the arrows on the right of the box, by typing in a number manually, or if you mouse over the offset distance text box, you can actually use the scroll wheel on your mouse to quickly and easily scroll between different offset sizes. Play around with this. I'm going to go ahead and do a outward round 3mm offset. There's no right or wrong, and it just really is up to you as far as the look you're going for. Once you've applied the offset, we want to then click on just the outline to make the outline active, and then going down to the colored bar on the bottom, these are different layer options, so we will choose a different color. I'm going with red. Once we've done that, we can now see in the cuts and layers window, we've actually got two layers now. We've got the initial one, which is the black color with fill, which is going to be our text, and then we've got the new red one, which is for the outline. Going to the preview, we can see once again what it's going to be happening. We've still got that fill on the inside, but the outside outline that we just created is just going to be a line that is an outline of the text. Now that we've got our design, we want to set the speed and power in the cuts layers window. I'm going to start by selecting the black fill layer, and in the bottom of that window, I'm going to change the speed from the 6,000 millimeters per minute to 3,000 and the power down to 15%. Then for the line, I want that a little bit darker, so I'm going to drop the speed from 6,000 millimeters per minute down to 2000 millimeters per minute, and I'm going to increase the power from the 20% it was at up to 35%. Now, depending on the machine you're using and depending on the material that you're engraving this onto, I'm using the Ortur Laser Master 2 Pro and some balsa wood. You might need to slightly change or tweak these settings, but this should at least be a safe place to start and at least run this initial job. Next, we're going to head over to the laser and grab the piece of material that we're going to be engraving. As mentioned, I'm using a piece of balsa wood. This is just a thin 2mm thick piece. Place that in your work area and then grab the head of the laser and pull it on top of that material, lifting the acrylic cover out of the way. Your laser will come with some sort of an adjustment tool. For the Laser Master 2 Pro, it is this cylinder that we will then need to place underneath the head of the laser before loosening the 2 screws that hold the laser in place. There's one on the left and one on the right. That will allow us to drop the laser on top of that cylinder so that way we have the correct focal length. Once it's in place, I recommend using one hand to hold the laser against the gantry and then your other hand to tighten those 2 screws back in place. Once you've made sure that the head of the laser is secure, you can remove the cylinder measurement tool and drop the acrylic cover back down. Now that we've got the height of our material set correctly, we'll want to hop back over to LightBurn to set the job origin. In LightBurn, there are 3 different options for your job's origin. There are absolute coordinates, user origin, and current position. For a machine like the Ortur Laser Master 2 Pro that has limit switches, the easiest option is going to be to use the absolute coordinates. Taking this directly from our documentation that I'll also have linked in the description, with absolute coordinates, the page grid you see in the main editing window represents your machine's work area. Anything you place in that area will be cut in the corresponding place on your machine. So in this specific example with the LightBurn text that I've created, if I have this centered within LightBurn in my workspace, it will be centered when I go to engrave it on my machine. If I move it higher up, it will engrave higher up on my machine. So how I place it within LightBurn is exactly how it is going to be placing it on the machine. If you have a different Ortur machine that happens to not have limit switches, the next easiest start from option is going to be using the current position. Also reading this from our documentation, with the current position, your job is going to cut relative to the current position of the laser head when you hit the start button. You use the job origin grid control in the laser window to tell LightBurn how you want to position the job relative to your laser. For example, if you use the center dot in the job origin, that means that LightBurn is expecting you to have positioned your laser dead center in the middle of your workpiece. And if you have it on the bottom left, for example, it's expecting the head of your laser to be on the bottom left of your workpiece. As mentioned, absolute coordinates is the easiest to use, and that is what we are going to be using on the Laser Master 2 Pro. So now that we've got that figured out, we need to position our material to make sure that when the job runs, it's going to be engraving on our material and not on our work surface. To do this, we are going to press the square framing button that is found in the laser window. Doing this, the head of your laser will move to the area it's going to be engraving, and it will do an outline of the area that your engraving is going to be within. I'll typically run the framing a few times and adjust the piece of material each time I run the frame until I feel like I've got it centered on my material, or, of course, if you don't want it centered, where you want the engraving to be on your piece of material. Now, the framing will get us pretty close, but it won't show us exactly where the laser is going to be. And so we can actually enable the laser when we're doing the framing. To do this, we'll head up to the top toolbar to the device settings, which will be the icon of the screwdriver and the wrench. And if we click on that, on the right side under other options, there is an option that says enable laser fire button. We'll want to check that to make sure it's green and enabled. Click OK to close out of this. And then you will need to restart LightBurn to enable this. I recommend when you click escape, of course, save your job to make sure that you can open it up and you don't lose any of the settings that you've done so far. Once you reopen LightBurn, if you go to the Move window, which is right next to the Cuts and Layers window, there is going to be a new option that says Power with a fire button next to it. I typically just set the power to 1%. That's more than enough to be able to see the laser and not have any risk of damaging or actually running an engraving into your workpiece when you don't want to. And you can trigger this by clicking the fire button, and that will turn the laser on, and then when you click the fire button again, it will turn the laser off. Next, let's open up our project again. If you go under File, Recent Projects, you will see your project that you created there. And now that we've got that fire mode enabled, we can do something pretty awesome. If we hold down the Shift key on our keyboard and click that same framing button, it'll run that framing, but this time it will have the laser on the 1% power that we set. And so what this will allow us to do is really hone in the positioning of our job before we run the engraving. When you feel like you're happy with the positioning of the framing that you've been running, all that's left is to hit the start button that is in the laser window, and that will start the engraving. As always, make sure that you are staying around and watching the job the entire time. If for some reason you notice that it is not engraving or it's not as dark as you would like, the settings were for this specific machine, but depending on the material you're using or if you've got a different laser, you may need to slow down the speeds and increase the power. After a few minutes, the job will complete and you should be greeted with your finished engraving. This is a great first step in learning how to use your laser with LightBurn. The next steps that I would recommend are looking through the official LightBurn documentation, signing up for the LightBurn forums, and looking at the many tutorial videos available on our YouTube channel. Links for each of the mentioned resources will be in the description of this video. If you're a machine manufacturer and would like us to make a video like this about your machine, please contact us at business@lightburnsoftware.com.